Xenoblade Chronicles 4 has a lot to live up to, coming off the back of two of Xeno's series' biggest titles with Xenoblade 2 and now Xenoblade Chronicles 3. And many questions are up in the air right now as to what direction this series will go from here, both narratively and gameplay-wise. And Robbo on my Discord suggested the topic for today's video, my Xenoblade Chronicles wishlist. So I went into the lab, did a few experiments like Klaus, and I cooked up 10 things that I would like to see from Xenoblade Chronicles as a series going forward. Because in my opinion, you have to strike while the iron is hot. More eyes are on this series than ever before. There is a lot of potential to go from here and for the series to take the next step in popularity, and to do something really special. So let's talk about what I would like to see out of Xenoblade Chronicles in the future. Let's start off with number 1. Now, I talked about this in a previous video, but in my opinion, Xenoblade Chronicles needs to revamp the combat introduction, and the way it just overall introduces you to its gameplay loop at the very beginning. I think Xenoblade Chronicles has a very underrated gameplay style. I find it very customizable, synergizes very easily with multiple different styles of progression, and when you have all the balls rolling, it's very fun and replayable in my opinion. However, it starts off agonizingly slow, and if you can up that pace from an earlier point in time, or at least give the player an option to start off at a faster pace with more buttons to press on a more often basis, I think that can do a lot of good as a new player experience, and to draw people in and to keep them attached, and not just have to press 3 buttons over the course of 60 seconds and then rinse repeat and just AFK the rest of the time. That can be a massive turnoff for a lot of people, and I think if Xenoblade wants to take that next step and to really retain a lot of the new players they may be able to get, or to attract more players and not have them be put off by the combat, the game needs to up its pace faster and get you in the swing of things earlier. Number 2. I want to see more boss mechanics like in Xenoblade 2 on Bringer of Chaos. For those who didn't do Bringer of Chaos, I don't blame you. Bringer of Chaos, in my opinion, is a difficulty mode designed for New Game Plus. It is designed, from my experience at least, for players who are endgame geared that want to utilize that endgame gear and not just completely steamroll over the game again. And as someone who has played every Xenoblade game at this point, one of the things I really found to appreciate with Xenoblade 2 and especially Bringer of Chaos was the fact that the bosses had individual unique mechanics I had to be on the lookout for and I had to build around. Malice, for instance, since I wasn't completely endgame geared, required me to build up dark resistance when I wanted to fight him, because his other attacks would ordinarily just one-shot me. But if I put dark resistance on everybody and sacrifice some DPS, his attacks no longer one-shot me, and it was far more manageable of a fight. I could also learn his other various mechanics, positioning, build around the fact that he can lock down blades or drivers. I can build around that using the tools in my kit. I can keep my distance away from other party members because of Monado Eater that he can throw to an individual party member and have an AoE irradiate from there. So I can prepare for that, I can learn his fight and get better at it. You have Big Rosa, where she may put down a missile somewhere on the map you can move away from, or if you have enough DPS, you can DPS the missile down to prevent that mechanic. It's very rudimentary, but it's at least something to pay attention to that the boss does. I don't think Xenoblade 2 was the best game ever when it came to having boss mechanics, but at least it had boss mechanics in a lot of ways. I couldn't tell you what any boss from Xenoblade 1 or 3, including their DLCs, actually do mechanically. That didn't just amount to me saying, okay, I need either more healing, more mitigation on my tanks, or I just need to do more DPS. I like it when there's a nice balance between the stuff I'm doing on my side of things, but also reacting to what the boss is doing. I think that could create more interesting boss design, more interesting engagements, and more memorable encounters. Number 3, let's take a pivot over to more of a story side of things for a minute. Let's talk about Mythra's kit. If you had asked me before Future Redeemed, I would have said I do not need to know anything about these other 2 kids from Rex. I'm fine with them just existing somewhere and having the story be on Mia squarely. However, with Glimmer now, we have 2 out of 3. I feel like you might as well just show us or tell us at some point what happens with the other one. Whether or not they become a main character, I think they will at some point. Personally, I'm fine with just getting a reference or even having them be a minor character or something. Like maybe a side quest or an NPC, or just not even a main character. Like maybe take up the role of like an Athoron a character that has an arc, but they're not one of the main party members. I'm fine with that personally. I would like to see them be more involved with the story of Xenoblade 4, which is also what I think they may do. But yeah, if you're 2 out of 3, this ain't a Meatloaf song. 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but right now, you might as well just pull the trigger, right? Number 4, I will not dwell on this because I've made multiple videos about this before, but I want to return to the skill mechanic. For those who have not played Xenoblade X, the skill mechanic is the giant robot you have access to. When you first unlock the skill, it can jump high and can transform into a ground vehicle, kind of like an Autobot. It lets you maneuver around the world faster, but also get to places you couldn't reach before, and at some point later on in the game, you also unlocked its flight module, which allowed you to, take a guess, fly around the map. It was really cool, and flying had its own unique theme song that was a freaking banger. It's called Don't Worry, look it up, it's amazing, which gave you even more access to the entire world. If you could see it, you could get to it. That was a tagline for Xenoblade X, and the skill mechanic allowed that to happen. It was really cool, and made just running around the map an interesting experience that evolved and progressed throughout the game. It's a mechanic I really hope to see fleshed out in the future in some capacity. I thought they were going to go that direction with the interlinks in Xenoblade 3, but those are really just there for combat. I would like to see that out-of-combat utility we got with Skells make a return in some form. Number 5, sticking with Xenoblade X for a minute, I would like to see X's story get a follow-up at some point. Whether or not you bring it into the canon, yes, there are ways to bring it into the canon, by the way, but whether or not they do that bring it into the canon with the numbered series, I would like to see an X2 at some point, because it is a world that is deep, engrossing, and rich in story potential. Was it perfectly executed in X? Absolutely not, but that does not mean that it should be abandoned, in my opinion. Honestly, I wouldn't mind seeing X be a side series alongside the numbered games. Let X have its own unique style and flow to it, while the numbered games have their own unique style and flow to them as well. Maybe borrow from one another if you think the game series is going to be better overall for that, but I would like to see an X2 at some point, because that is a story that is primed to be expanded on, especially with the ending being such a cliffhanger. Now, number 6, Xenosaga ports or remake. The ending of Future Redeemed is polarizing. Bringing Xenosaga into the canon will be an amazing moment if you grew up, or if you played Xenosaga, and you played those games, and you loved those games, and you thought they were abandoned and forgotten to do any number of issues. Having that moment with the radio, oh radio, tell me everything you know, in Future Redeemed, where Xenosaga isn't just mentioned, it's pretty much canonized, is a great feeling, an amazing moment to have those old stories you care a lot about be brought back up in importance. It's like seeing your favorite childhood wrestler make their return at WrestleMania or the Royal Rumble or something. It's a great feeling. However, a lot of people, especially most Xenoblade fans at this point, probably have never played Xenosaga. They're old games, and they're not really easily accessible in the modern day right now. And depending upon how important Xenosaga will be to the story in the future, I think having a port or a remake is basically a necessity at this point. Unless they can do a very good freaking job of teaching the player the important stuff from Saga in an engaging way in Xenoblade 4. I don't know if that's the thing they're going to go with. I think just doing ports or a remake and finding a way to get that done is the play to go with. Now, you may say that's not feasible. Well, they made the active decision to bring Xenosaga into the canon and make Xenosaga as important as it is in the overall lore. When you're just talking about Xenoblade itself, you don't really need Saga at all for that to understand those events. But depending upon how important that Saga lore will be in the future, if you're gonna really lean in that direction, you have to give players an easy way and a realistic way to experience those stories again. And as like a 6A, if they're gonna go in this direction, I hope we see Cosmos become a party member in Xenoblade 4 as a tie-in. I think that would be a really cool way just to tie in Blade and Saga, especially considering the fact we've had Cosmos in Xenoblade before. She was a Blade in Xenoblade 2. Yeah, she wasn't in the main story, but if you can do it, I don't see why you wouldn't want to. I think it'd be a pretty cool moment, or have a pretty cool party dynamic around having Cosmos from Saga bring her into the canon, but also make her one of the main party members. I think that'd be cool. Number 7, this is a big one for me. I want to see the appearance system from Xenoblade 1 Definitive Edition make a return. I have no freaking clue why they designed the appearance system for Definitive Edition and just did not use it for Xenoblade 3. I couldn't tell you. Xenoblade 2's costume system's god-awful. Why they tied that to power and actual accessories is freaking beyond me. Xenoblade 3 is cool because you unlock an appearance like an entire outfit for maxing out the rank or getting rank 10 for each of the classes, which is cool in my opinion, but I prefer the customization you had with the appearance system from Xenoblade 1. I like going to all the different vendors, getting a whole bunch of new loot through various quests or vendors or whatever, and be able to mix and match to my own preferences. I like that. I think that's a system that can be expanded on, iterated on, brought back in the series, and stick with it. It gives players more agency and more customization and more options, and if they want to go with full sets, let them be able to do that. But if they want to mix and match pieces and look however they want, I don't see the problem with that. Number 8. This is an overall thing for me, but I want to see new locations and landscapes, not just relying on older aesthetics. That's what kind of Xenoblade 3 did in a lot of ways for lore reasons, right? Ionios was this inherent mix and match between the worlds of Xenoblade 1 and 2, which made sense for the story that was going on with Xenoblade 3, but for me, it made for less memorable locations on the whole than in games like Xenoblade 1 and 2, where those locations were fresh in your mind and they really stuck with you, and they were really grandiose, whereas in Xenoblade 3, a lot of the times it kind of just felt like we had, like, the bargain bin versions of those locations brought over. Like, Erythia Sea is very cool in Xenoblade 3, but to me, I still prefer Aerith Sea, and I prefer Leftheria from Xenoblade 2. Like, they took a little bit of each, but it wasn't as grandiose or as special or as iconic as in the original games. I would love to see some new locations and landscapes that are able to really hold their own and look beautiful within the confines of its own game, and make Xenoblade 4 really feel special and unique from a visual perspective, not just relying on older designs. Number 9, we're continuing our trend of having these wishlist items be more broad stroke things, because I want to see a follow-up to the ending of Future Redeemed. I don't think the play is to go for a completely new story. I don't think they're going to go that route to begin with, but I also don't want to just see them go, hey, now this new story we're going to do for Xenoblade 4 is like 10,000 years in the future. I don't want to see that, at least yet. You build up for pretty much the entire end of Xenoblade 3, this idea that these characters were going to have to go their separate ways and never be reunited, and that they were okay with that because it was for the greater good. So they separate, and you end off Xenoblade 3 saying, hey, we'll see each other again, we'll find a way to see each other again. They really built that up. It's pretty much reference every other line, and it's how they end the game, specifically with the Mio final diary entry for the save screen at the very end of the game, while also showing Noah disappearing when he hears the off-seeing tune again in the crowd. And then you have Future Redeemed, right, where it's entirely a prequel, until the post-credit scene, where they just show the planets separating, but then interlinking once again into one planet. Which, sure, that's cool, but with how much build-up the separation had in Xenoblade 3, I want to see a follow-up at some point, where these characters have to deal with the aftermath of having the worlds be brought back together in a way that doesn't completely destroy either world. It reunites them into one true world now. Okay, follow up that immediately. Like, personally, I would like Xenoblade 4 to be set immediately after the Future Redeemed ending. Like, have it start like Halo 3, where you see the blue thing from the sky at the end of Future Redeemed crash land onto the planet, and pick it up immediately from there. That's my preference, personally. Which would also work for bringing Cosmos into the main party, because I'm fairly certain that was Cosmos at the end of Future Redeemed. That's my thing. I'm like 95, 99% certain that was Cosmos. Now, for number 10, I want a new identifiable thing for the future of Xenoblade. I don't think they need to stray away from having an iconic sword, like the Monado from Xenoblade 1, or the Aegis sword from 2, or Lucky 7 from 3. But I don't think we need to have a red sword that almost always looks like the Monado 1 if you drew it strictly from memory. Maybe a new sword design, or, you know, a something new that you can easily point to and say, oh, this represents Xenoblade 4. Like how we have that one image of the 3 swords from Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3 all in the ground next to each other representing the Klaus arc. I want to see something new for that visual to represent Xenoblade, say, 4, 5, and 6. If they're going to go to trilogy, or whatever the next arc's going to be. I would like to see something like that. Maybe a new color for a sword, or a different design to take it into the future, or just something. This one's very open-ended. I'm open to a lot of different things. I just want to see something, you know? So yeah, that's my wish list for Xenoblade Chronicles in the future. I would love to see some combination of these things, Personally, I would love to see all of them. It's my wish list, and you may disagree with me, or you may have a different wish list or a different priority. This list wasn't in any particular order, but I would like to see all these things come into play in some capacity. But leave a comment down below with what you would like to see from Xenoblade Chronicles 4. Whether it's a gameplay feature, a story feature, an overarching theme, what would you like to see going into the future for Xenoblade Chronicles? Thank you all for tuning in, my pleasure for making the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out and helps support future content, and I greatly appreciate it. Stay safe, have a great day, go play some video games if you can, and as always, I'll see you all next time. Bye bye everybody, until we meet again.